Okay, I'm back. This is a redacted and shorter version of our first class so that I can get you information that I think you need, but we didn't have time because of the library. So you are required to watch this video and email me when you have done so, and I will at the end ask a question that hopefully you learned in this video, and you can tell me what it is you learned so that I can verify that you've seen it. If anybody, by the way, knows how to use Google Docs to be able to do an attendance thing with what I would call an exit question, please reach out, because I haven't figured that part out yet. And that would make it easier. Although with only 20 of you, when it's a live lecture, it's fairly easy for me to know who's here and who isn't. So by now, some of you have done the critical reading exercise. I don't know if you read the article on critical reading and you've not had, that's a twin, and you've not yet had an opportunity to view the lecture that I'm going to do after this one on critical reading. There is a case at the Twin website called Fisher versus Carousel. It's not substantive law that you're particularly familiar with, but it will accomplish what needs to be accomplished for purposes of talking about critical reading. So, working on my truncated schedule. Nothing here you don't know. Reading law is different than any other kind of reading you'll ever do, actually. And the writing skills consist both of what are called what our writing people refer to as higher order of concerns, which is your grammar, your spelling, and those kinds of things, which you don't always have an opportunity to take the time to edit on an exam, as well as the substantive method of writing, like using an IRAC. Okay, so let's talk about last semester, because part of what we want to talk about is what you're going to change going forward. So, are these comments you got on your exams? You can spot issues, but it's too conclusory. You didn't do much more than spot the issue. Is there no explanation of why or how the facts fit in this case? Are your answers complete enough? Is your analysis matching the law to the facts? If you didn't, there are some simple tricks to use. You may or may not have heard this, but if your analysis paragraph can be, if you use words like because, as a result of this fact, this is what the law requires. There are connecting words that will let you do the analysis. And remember, the equation is rules plus facts equal analysis. Professor Wendell, in his book, who I think I told you talks about a public policy plane, a fact plane, and right in the middle is the law plane, the rule plane. He suggests, and it's an interesting way to look at it, think about this as a jury trial. In a jury trial, all the facts are put on, all the evidence is put on. That's what the jury gets to hear. At the end of the trial, the judge will instruct the jury on the law. When you go farther on into law, and perhaps when you get out, you'll get an opportunity to read some of the pattern jury instructions, which are terribly boring, but have been done by a panel to be able to make sure that the jury is instructed thoroughly about the law. When the jury leaves to go deliberate, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to talk about the facts, but they're going to apply the law to the facts. That's what they do. After you determine what's happened, you apply the law to the facts to reach a verdict. That's in essence what you're doing when you're doing an analysis. If you go backwards and you apply the facts to the law, that's when you end up with conclusory statements and an inadequate explanation of why you reached the conclusion that you've reached. It is key to, we used to use the term show your work. It is really key to show your reasoning for drawing the conclusion that you draw or drew. So, are you a dead horse beater? I know, I don't love the picture of the dead horse, but I inherited it and I kind of think he's funny. So you've spotted an issue, but you can't just talk about the one issue. If there's another issue, you only get a limited number of points per issue. And I know you all had a contracts exam, your first assessment, I think it was, that had about 6 issues. So there was a time problem with the way that exam may have been drafted, but if you spend too much time on an issue, if you do what we call either a rule dump or you're not exactly sure what the answer is, but you are going to talk it to death and try and convince the professor that you know everything there is to know about that issue, you've gone beyond being comprehensive and you wasted your time. So, like this says, over-enthusiastic analysis can cause you to lose more points. The points on your exam, as you know, are all in your analysis. You don't regurgitate the facts. The professor wrote the facts. You need to get the right rule statement and then the analysis. Honestly, your conclusion counts, but if your conclusion's wrong, but you have spotted the issue and applied the rule, even if your conclusion's wrong, but you have thoroughly analyzed, you will maximize your points. Are you a scrambler? Do you pre-write your answers when you write an essay question? Remember, professors are used to reading long legal documents. They take one issue at the time. You've read that now in court decisions. If you just try to write instead of organizing, you're going to miss things that you even thought about when you thought to start writing, because you won't have it written down or organized in any way. And your lack of organization is more likely to be confusing to your professor and get you fewer points on an exam. So, key, spend 20 to 25% of your time pre-writing or organizing the issues when you write an essay exam. And we're going to talk about pre-writing at a later date. I think some of you have already covered T-charts, and you can certainly do a rough outline. I will say your essay questions, because they're on a computer as opposed to handwritten where you can start circling and doing that, I think you're at a disadvantage, at least from the way I do my work. But you don't got a choice. So you're going to need to learn to do some really quick sketching out of pre-writing, looking from the screen down onto paper until we get back in the right place. Okay. Does this sound like you? I spent too much time briefing cases. We wanted to teach you the technique of case briefs. You need case briefs, and different professors will require different amounts of detail in your case briefs going forward. I'm not going to talk about a 12-point brief in this class. There are professors who require you to have the information in a 12-point brief, and so you'd have to keep doing that. Don't spend too much time briefing cases, but continue to do it. Because 1, you need to do it so that you understand the case and you can study from it. And 2, so you're organized if you're called on in class. Did you spend too much time preparing an outline or flashcards? I didn't go to classes regularly. I didn't attend office hours. I didn't go to tutoring, the tutor sessions. Those are things that you can change, and that's something that you can take advantage of going forward. Didn't find out how you'd be tested in advance. Challenging when you've got an adjunct, which you do, but you can find out about how Dean Madoc tests just by asking an upperclassman who had her. I don't know, again, whether she'll share some of her old exams with us for practice, but they all know, and they all took, many of them took classes with her. So they'll share with you. They understand the advantage of that. You failed to learn a basic format for exam answers. That's the IRAC or CRAC. Didn't practice. You know, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice. Same thing with law. Law is called a practice for a reason. You know, before we do these lectures, we tend to practice them. Before I go into court, I have read the file. As a judge, I've read the file. If there's law I need to look up, I need to look it up, and you're ready. That's practice. If you thought that serious financial problems, family problems, or illness, COVID, wouldn't impact your learning, I think you know a little different by now, but you're in charge of your personal life, and to the extent that you can manage it, you need to manage it. I talked to at least one of you about setting boundaries with family when you're studying and you're working. It's one of the reasons that coming to the law school to study, making reservations to do that, has some real advantages. And if you've got personal issues about stress or depression, or you're not sleeping well, reach out to Brett Bowers in the wellness office, because he has a lot of tips and keys that do work for people. And if you need more, he'll connect you so that you can find a way to try and get your mental health in a place that works really, really well for you this semester. So, keys to success for second semester. By now, you've done the assessment, your self-assessment about what you did and didn't do in your first semester. You've seen your grades. You've had an opportunity to think it all through. So what is it that you've learned that you need to change to do better, to increase your GPA this semester? Well, when you were brand new to law school, you sort of, although you had a lot of water wings, got thrown in the deep end with water wings, and they told you to swim. Now you know a lot more about what law school is and what it's going to demand, and how to make it work for you. So don't waste the first part of the semester thinking you're going to study for finals at the end of the semester. Now you know that the entire semester is that it all builds, and so you have to be studying and doing practice exams and those kinds of things from the beginning. Using your time well. If you want to talk about study schedules, I'm happy to talk about that with you. There are articles and other things that are posted at TWEN under, I think it's time management. Please go in and take a look at that. Because you are evening students and you have, most of you have full-time jobs, you should know a little bit more about time management than people that just got out of school. But I also know that because you have so much going on in your lives with families and jobs and that kind of things, your tendency may be to put off stuff that you need to do now, or to use secondary sources as a primary source, which is really, really bad. I once saw somebody answer an exam question with information from Barbary that the professor hadn't covered, and the professor knew it came from Barbary, and it just wasn't pretty. You need to continue to read and brief your cases. Again, don't depend on secondary resources. Don't use somebody else's outline. If you can't make your own, talk to me. We'll come up with a substitute. But it's your learning, and it's your active listening in class, and it's your either meeting with the professors or being around when other people are meeting with your professors during office hours, because you'll learn just by listening. Life balance kind of goes without saying. And I just mentioned about meeting with Brett Bowers. So, by the way, on the practice thing, somebody said what was mentioned was, if you're not happy with your grade, go talk to the professor about your exam. See what you can learn that way. When should you review your notes for class preparation? Some of you review your notes just before you go to class. I would suggest to you that the time to review your notes before class is fine. It's great. But after class. So we're going to get to that, I think, in a slide or two. If you understand your reading and you understand you've done in the case book, you've done the practice questions and the notes that are usually surrounding edited cases and case books, you will be better prepared to understand what the teacher is teaching and how to follow the information. Ultimately, that will result in better notes on your part and a more thorough understanding. Okay, maybe we're not going to another one. So this is what I want to say to you about notes. Best time to review your notes is the 10 minutes after class. The reason is that's when you mark in your notes something that you didn't understand and need a thing you need an answer to, or something that you missed, and you aren't in the position to just turn to the people next to you and say, I didn't catch that. So you need to mark your notes accordingly so you fill in those holes. Skipped. So, when we tell evening students that you should spend 25 to 30 hours per week on law school, it includes your class prep, your class time, your tutorials, your studying or time, and you know now, you didn't when you started law school, that your studying time can be broken up into a series of different tasks. Reviewing your reading, doing case briefs, doing flashcards, either making them and or using them to study, using a whiteboard. All of the techniques that you use, you can break it up. And the most important thing is to make sure that you build in time for practice, so that you're either doing practice essays or practice multiple choice. If you front load your time in a semester instead of wait to cram till the end, you'll have a much, much better result. Limiting outside distractions. I know you recognize that little phone right there. So many of you are studying from home, and having your phone sitting on your desk, bad idea. Hide your phone in another room and turn it off. Don't answer your phone when you're concentrating on studying. You got to prioritize one or the other. Some of you are working in situations where you've got other people in the house and it can be a bit noisy. Noise canceling headphones are great for that. There was one student that we talked about turning your desk so you're not watching people walk through the room. Anything that can be distracted, particularly if you're slogging through some case that you're just slogging through and it's just hard. Any distraction will not only take your attention briefly, but will potentially entice you to get up and leave. Not good. So set up how things work best for you in a distraction-free environment. You can do better. You all are certainly intellectually capable of maximizing your grades here. You know, you have to have faith in the admissions office. They thought you can do it. I think you can do it. You probably think you can do it yourself. It's then a matter of buckling down and prioritizing, as well as learning the techniques that we're going to talk about and applying them. And I can tell you these techniques will absolutely carry you through. So that is all I have to talk about for this lecture. You know that there is a 13-minute VARC lecture on the TWEN website. You now have the materials, or you will have a lecture for critical reading, let's see, it's Friday, by Saturday night. Several of you have done the case synthesis example, and I am in the process of reading, and I will comment on them and get back to you on them. And because some of you are answering it before the deadline, I am going to trust that because you are law students and you're familiar with the honor code, that if when I comment I send you back a copy of the model answers, which I'm not going to make live until the date that immediately after everything's due, please don't share them with people who haven't done this yet. And if you want to rewrite, we can talk about that too. So with that, I will see you on Tuesday, and I'm going to do one more async lecture between now and then.